Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Welcome to the Thursday night segment of the Outer Realm Radio. We are broadcasting live via the International Public Radio right here on the United Public Radio Network 105.3 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing folks over at Folgers Coffee who have been with us from day one. Thank you, Folgers. Would not be the same without you being a part of our journey. Huge thank you as well to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, aka Justin Snicker, an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, dark wave electronic music, which is available everywhere, especially Bandcamp, Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, and of course, most streaming platforms. So tonight, we welcome for the very first time Robert Bosnak, and he will be discussing one of my favorite topics, which is, of course, alchemy. And I'm a bit of a rookie at it, but I'm very intrigued by it, and I've sort of dabbled in it here and there. So really anxious to see what he's got to say on it. So to participate in tonight's, well, basically, we already people are chiming in. So you can find us on International Public Radio on YouTube, on UFO Paranormal Radio on YouTube. You can find us on the Outer Realm and Canada's Most Haunted, not the group page, the pro page on Facebook, along with our network, all the different, I can't remember them all as I scroll them up. So sorry, guys, but you'll find it because they're streaming everywhere and they're just going to be all over your profiles. And of course, we're not going to forget Twitch. Can't forget Twitch because they're pretty active on there as well. So, Bubbly, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Did I get all that in there?
I think so.
Wow. All right, then.
I don't even have them written down on my board in front of me because they don't fit. And it's
I'm going to do it right
10 by
now.
12.
There, I'm going to bring it across. So hello, Dave. Hello, Tamara. Nice to see everybody chiming in. Dave, I'm really looking forward to tonight's topic. Yes, me too, Dave. This is awesome. So do you want to give a quick...
Yes, absolutely. Let's do
Alrighty.
that. Our guest tonight is Zurich-trained Jungian psychoanalyst of 40 years and pioneered the embodied imagination method, an author of several books, former president of the International Association for the Study of Dreams, and founder of the Santa Barbara Healing Sanctuary. Please welcome Robert Bosnak to our show.
Hello there.
Hi, Robert. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Wow. I hear you are in sunny Australia.
Hi, Jeannie.
It is sunny Australia. We're moving into summer here.
Yes.
We're
I
well
know, we're
aware.
very envious. It's very cold and wet here right
We
now.
switch out seasons.
I've had 3 summers this year, so
Stop bragging.
To winter sometime.
Yeah, very lucky.
Yes,
very
it's good
lucky.
to whine about, right?
Oh, I know. Wow,
I don't
wow.
mind the winter. I don't mind the winter, especially from the inside.
like
The
winter.
snow is so beautiful to look at. I'm one of those people.
I'm
I
not
like
one of those
both.
people
I like
either. I'm
the-
with Robert on this.
Yeah, I like the extreme heat or the extreme cold and the snow. Not the in-between person.
My
Mhm.
daughter lived in Australia and loved it. And I was surprised when she decided to come back home. I'm like, why? Now she's like, I never should have left Australia.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
But
Well-
there was just no talking to you at the time.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm a commuter. I live in
Yes.
Santa Barbara and in Sydney. My wife lives in Sydney, so I go back and forth.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, it's a good arrangement.
That's
Yeah.
not a bad
And we'll
trip
leave
when
that
you're
right
on the
there.
other
So-
side.
Right.
It's not a bad trip when you're living on that side, like on the West Coast.
Yeah, that's
How
true.
long
Yes,
is
on the
the
way-
flight?
It's 15 hours,
Oh,
and so
Yeah.
you get very used to it.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess you
Wow.
would. I don't know. I like to fly, so I don't mind it.
Yeah, me too. I love flying.
Yeah,
So,
I do too, but not more than 5 hours.
hello, Janie chiming in.
Yeah.
So, I guess how I like to, you've never been on the show before, so our listeners, and we have
No.
many, why don't we acquaint them all with you? Tell us a little bit about yourself and lead us into alchemy. Why alchemy? So, tonight we're the students, you are the teacher. We'll start with that if it works for you.
Okay. Yeah, that works. Um, so I have been studying alchemy for the last 50 years.
Wow.
Me
And
too, Dave.
I've been very, very interested in it, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done that.
Right.
And I started studying it when I started my training in 1971 to become a Jungian psychoanalyst. And in order to do that training, you have to learn alchemy because C.G. Jung was very interested in alchemy, as you probably know or may know. And because he found that alchemy was very similar to what he encountered in dreams. The imagery of alchemy was very similar to the images of dreams.
Hmm.
And so he started to study it, and he became one of the main collectors of alchemical books and wrote a lot about it. His most famous book about it is called Mysterium Conjunctionis, which is the mystery of conjunction, the mystery of the sacred marriage between the metals. And so from then on, I started to study it, and I got hopelessly hooked. It is completely incomprehensible. It the one of the main alchemists is called Geber, and from him comes the word Geberish, which became gibberish. So it is utter gibberish. It is completely ununderstandable and totally fascinating, because
Yes.
when you go to the elements of alchemy that are least understandable, and I am working on it from the Latin texts because translations are always just a little bit half, and I don't read Arabic. Otherwise, that would have been great because there's a lot of Arabic alchemy, but I do Latin alchemy.
Wow.
And when you study alchemy, you find that the most incomprehensible parts of alchemy, when you really chew on them and sit with them and let them go into you, suddenly begin to spark great insights into who you are, what's going on with you, because alchemy is about processes, right? And so we are always in a process. Like if you're in a relationship, your relationship is in a process. You say it's very hot or it's very cold. Those are terms that alchemists would use. Or it's very fiery,
Hmm.
or you're in a kind of a lull, or you're in something that is very explosive. All these terms are terms that are used in alchemy. And so alchemy is very good to describe processes. So these processes can be your quote unquote internal processes. They can be your relationship processes. They can be your creative processes. All these parts can be approached with alchemy as one of the greatest metaphor systems that was ever devised.
Wow. It is definitely very convoluted. I've always been intrigued,
Totally.
and the whole term "as above, so below" is just something that it's always fascinated me. It's what sort of got me dabbling into it. I always came with interesting imagery, so I would just post it everywhere.
Mhm.
And but it's just, I think it's probably one of the terms that most people would be familiar with, but would have no idea of
No
the
idea.
actual meaning.
Yeah.
And when you
Yeah.
think about it, it really doesn't make any sense as to
It doesn't make any sense. And so
right.
you need to really chew on it and work on it. And what you're just describing as above, so below, is the law of correspondences. So that there is a sense that everything is a body, right? The human body or the metals, they're all bodies in alchemy. Alchemy is all about biology. Everything's alive. And so the metals are bodies like we are bodies. So the metals have their own imagination, the metals have their own soul, the metals have their own spirit, and it is the metals start to copulate. So it's very sexual terminology that is being used in the way that the metals melt together. And that's why the marriage and the mystical marriage is such an important image. But as above, so below, is that there is a correspondence between everything, that there's a correspondence between the cosmos out there and the cosmos inside, that it's all part of the same world, and that's called the unus mundus, the one world. We're in one world, according to alchemy. And so astrology, for instance, which is something that most people do know about a little bit, is about these laws of correspondences. It is not about causality, right? Mars doesn't cause aggression. Mars doesn't cause you to attack. But there is a correspondence between the movement of Mars. They were called planetos. A planet is a wanderer. The word planetos means wanderer. So they wander through the sky. They wander through the world, through the firmament. The firmament is fixed. And so either it's seen as stars or it's seen as holes in the cosmos that was made of black onyx. There are holes in it, and from behind the divine light shines in through the holes in the cosmos that we see as stars. That's another way of looking at the stars.
Wow.
So the planets move across the firmament, and as they move across the firmament, they cause a cosmic clock. And a cosmic clock with several different arms that move in all different directions. And so they correspond, that time of that clock corresponds to our inner time. That is alchemy, that is astrology. So we are now we only understand causality. So we think that these things are caused by the planets. It has nothing to do with it. It doesn't cause anything. It is part of the as above, so below, that this is qualitative time. And every planet has its quality, and therefore we correspond to that quality at the time that the planet is active, which is always.
Which is always. No, exactly. Yeah. It's really, it's like a lot to swallow.
Yes. Well, that's one of the problems. And so
It
that's
is. But it makes sense the way you explain it.
Well, the idea is so to go on with alchemy, and I will start talking too much and too fast. I'm very sorry, but I'm totally
that's okay.
fascinated with this stuff.
No, please.
Yeah. So the planets, the wanderers, planted their seeds in the earth. And so the seed of Mars is iron, the seed of Venus is copper, the seed of the sun is gold, the seed of the moon is silver. The seed of lead is the seed of Saturn is lead, and the seed of Jupiter is tin. And so and then the seed of Mercury, of course, is quicksilver, mercury. So each planet has their own metal. And so what we know in astrology is also true for the metals. We have to see that we are dealing with knowledge from before the 17th century. The novel that I've just written is about the 17th century, when there is a change that happens from alchemy to science. And it's a very romantic story, and it's about triangles, and it's a love story. It's totally fascinating. I spent 10 years writing it. It's called Red Sulphur. It's just coming out now.
Very nice.
So the alchemists, what they're trying to do is they're working on the seeds of the planets. So the planets are the in-between. The planets are the in-between between our earth, our earthly temporal being that goes through decay and dies, and eternity, that is the stars. And then there's this in-between world that is the world of the planets, of the wanderers. And so it comes from philosophy in which there were three worlds. There's the world of matter, There's the world of spirit, so spirit and eternity, or the world these days we would call it mathematics.
Mhm.
So are those two worlds of mind and body, and there's a world in between. And this in between world is the world of creative imagination. And
Mm.
the creative imagination is just as real as the world of the body and the world of the mind. So they have a notion of a three-partite system, not a dualistic system that we now have
So
because we're
would
Aristotelian.
creativity be like the essence, the soul, that sort of thing?
Creativity would be, yes, there would be essence in creativity.
Okay.
It is the way that, according to alchemy, that the world was created in a creative act, in an ongoing creative act, and that we
Right.
can participate directly in this ongoing creative act.
Okay.
It's also like the basis of Islam and many other
Right.
religions. Yeah,
Right. It's deep, Robert. That's right.
but it's
Really,
interesting. Yeah,
it is. It's
it can
just
keep you busy. It can keep you busy for
it could keep
decades.
you busy forever.
Yeah,
Just like
Well,
forever.
the alchemists used to say the art is long and life is short, and that's true.
This is true.
Yeah.
Yes. So, how do the emerald tablets fit into all of this? Because again, I'm trying to use things that people have heard about and people, have read about. And I'd like to just try to bring in the connections to sort of
Mhm.
welcome in people who are completely green to this. And then we can
Mhm.
delve into all your juicy stuff.
And we could talk about green.
Yes. All right.
Yes. So the emerald tablets, the tabula smaragdila, as they're called in Latin,
Wow.
they are very early texts. I think that they are just about the earliest texts, and they bring in the process of the making of the stone. Now, the stone is the philosopher's stone. We may know it from Harry Potter.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and there it was called the sorcerer's stone, same thing.
Mhm.
And the philosopher's stone was the source of all creativity, and the alchemists um, also had atomic theories. The notion of atoms, which means atomos, which cannot be split. It comes from Democritus, who is like 2,500 years ago. So the notion of atoms already existed, but
Mhm.
the atoms of the alchemist was very different from the atoms of the physicist. The
Mhm.
atoms of the physicist, when you split the atom of the physicist, you get energy, right? Nuclear bomb. So when you go to the core of the atoms, you find energy.
Mhm.
And that is Einstein and ESMC square. That is the notion of physics. The notion of alchemy is that if you get to the core of the atom, you get to the creative spark. So that as the alchemist works, the alchemist will free the creative sparks from the bodies of the metals, and the more creative sparks the alchemist can gather and put together,
Mm.
that then creates what is called the tincture. And the tincture is what the word tincture means, coloring agent. The
Mm.
tincture then it's just like the elixir. And then if you coagulate that, then that becomes the stone. So this tabula smaragdina is about that process.
Wow. That's interesting. A couple of, I guess, some comments. This one here, just to make comment as to what you were discussing about the levels. So you have vibration, a physical vibration of creativity, and a vibration of spirit. Okay, I'm guessing.
Yes, I think that it's more than just vibration. It's a whole world. There is a world of spirit, there is a world of matter, and there's a world in between of essence. And the
Right.
world of essence, of in between, is the creative imagination. So vibration is part of that, but
Mhm.
it's not only vibration.
Okay. And Dave says the philosopher's stone equals pineal gland.
That is that is very Cartesian. Descartes used to say that the only consciousness that exists is in the pineal gland. I think that the philosopher's stone is not necessarily just the pineal gland, but some people may have compared those, and in the 17th century, 16th, 17th century, the pineal gland was seen to be the center of consciousness.
Yeah.
That's why Descartes took that.
So it's a
Yeah.
depends who you ask kind of question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That would make sense. I mean, it was revered in all ancient cultures, especially the
Yeah.
Egyptian
Mhm.
culture, which
Yeah.
in fact was probably the birth of alchemy.
Yes, the birth of alchemy is the combination. It's probably somewhere in the Sumerian triangle there, Euphrates, where mummification,
Mm,
which is the quest for eternal life
yeah.
and for eternal form, so that the quest for immortality,
Hmm.
and the weaving of dyes, the creation of dyes for the cloth, the dye making,
Hmm.
and the art of the smith, and then the world of herbology all came together, and that created alchemy. That's how alchemy came to be.
Hmm. That's fascinating. Now we're going to jump into your books. We're going to get into all of this alchemy,
Mhm.
21st century. We're going to get into medieval times. We're going to get into where you think it's going. I'm going to give you the stage. It's yours. We'll just jump in here or there, make it look like we're actually part of the show.
Okay.
So, but for now, it's your show. Go.
I'm taking notes. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
Robert, I'm taking notes.
Okay,
I'm
good,
the
great.
green one. I'm the green
Uh-huh.
one. The
So let's start with
Esmeralda, as
green.
they say in Italy.
Yeah,
Esmeralda.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's like the tabula smaragdina is about the green.
Yeah.
So green is being seen as the beginning, and that's why you call yourself green. That is when you're just beginning and setting out. And so alchemy goes through a series of colors, and I can talk about that. Let's begin there, okay? About
Any way you'd
colors,
like.
because people love colors.
Absolutely.
So we begin with green, which is a color of innocence, which is a color of where you don't know anything yet, where you're just beginning, where you're just opening. And in alchemy, it's called the greening force of nature, and it's equated with springtime. Now, of course, innocence can't stay. Innocence has to go, because if you have a person who at 50 is still innocent, you should ask their friends how they are, because then you push everything away onto other people. Nobody is innocent after a certain time. So innocence decays, and that is called nigredo, that is called black, that is the world falls apart when you get super disappointed, when you get hurt, and when you get harmed, and all those kind of things happens to everybody. And so that in alchemy is called black. In the term of nigredo, it's the black of night. It is not black in the racial term. It's black, the black of night, nigredo. And so that's where everything falls apart. That's where you are at war with yourself, at war with other people, where the world is no longer the beautiful world that it used to be. And as it falls apart, you get into a state that we would these days, it's a melancholy state, a state that we would call these days depression, this dark, black depression. And as you sink into the depression, you get to the nadir of that, the low point of the depression. And the low point of the depression would be the place where you say, I can't do this anymore. Just can't. I can't. That I can't is the nadir of the depression. And as you come out of it into the blues is the sense of loss. The blues is where she took my car, she took my house, she took everything, and I am now all alone. Or you can switch genders. And so you get into the blues, and then as you move into the blues, like blues music, it moves into, this is all what the alchemist described. Then it moves into the light blue, and the light blue is the blue of heaven, and that is called Salem. And the blue of heaven is actually where the spark of new possibilities begins to come to the surface. It's also called the peacock's tail, because in the tail of the peacock, all different new possibilities come. A shimmering of new things happen. In alchemy, it's when you have oil on water, then you see all the different colors that start happening. That is the peacock's tail. And then new possibilities begin to come out, new sparks begin to come to the surface, and that is the light blue, the heaven. And then what happens is, according to alchemy, this then can move into the white, which is the silver of the mirror. So now we're moving from one side of the mirror to the other side of the mirror, and then we're in the other side of the mirror is the world of imagination and imagery. Then we get into new images for our lives. We get into a new state of mind, a new state of being that is all imagined yet, and then that goes into the earth. You put that into the body, that moves into the body, that is called yellow, the citrinitas. And so as it moves into the body, it begins to grow new life, and then new life begins to come out, and then it goes into the world, and then it turns red, which is gold. Then it becomes active in the world. So that is the world of colors according to alchemy. But of course, everything is happening simultaneously. What I'm saying in the storyline actually happens all at the same time. So that makes it very complicated.
Yeah, that's crazy, but it's so interesting. It's so interesting.
The colors are interesting. The Italian culture with the emerald green was something that you did when one was engaged, and your engagement party would be in the spring, and your colors were green.
All the same.
So it's funny how some stuff ends up and you don't even realize it.
Yes, well, see, these elements are archaic. They come from many different parts of culture. That's why alchemy has so many similarities to astrology, and has so many similarities to folk culture, folk tales, fairy tales. All these things that come up in the imagination come up in many different places. And so, that's what Jung called archetypal patterns. And these archetypal patterns you can find in many different places. It seems to be the structure of the imagination.
Wow. It's funny, as you're explaining it, things are coming up from, like my culture being Italian.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
No. I'm just that just caught me, because I remember asking my mom at an engagement party when I was very young, why would she pick green? Because when you're a child, everything's pink, blue, purple, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember her explaining that to me. And the thought behind emerald green was life, was new, was starting. It just, and that town is archaic still to this day. So.
So then they still have it, because they're still connected to the old earth. And and so in the green, according to alchemy, of course, the green is related to what we these days call copper oxide. Copper oxide is when copper turns green, right? And so there's a story, an alchemical story in the Latin text called the Rosarium Philosophorum, which is my great interest. The Rosarium Philosophorum is the rose garden of the philosophers. It's the compendium of all alchemical knowledge, but the high points of the compendium of all alchemical knowledge written down in 1550. And so that is the text that I've been studying. And in that text, one of the older alchemists tells a younger alchemist, you think that the green of copper is the leprosy of Venus. It's an illness. I'm telling you, the green of copper actually is the most important thing in our craft. From that green of copper, the stone is made. So if you look at it, for instance, from a psychoanalytic perspective, copper is related to Venus. So Venus is related to love, right? And one of the main ways that people come to us as psychotherapists is Venus is also green. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And that's why in psychoanalysis or in psychotherapy, the first things that comes in usually is problems of love, right?
Mm.
So it is where love is no longer shining, but the green is beginning to come on top of it. It's the love is turning green, and that green, the alchemist says, that the problems of love, that is what the stone is made of. The stone is not made of the shiny innocence of love. The stone is made of the problems that love causes.
The
and I find that a
oxidation.
very interesting. Yeah, the oxidation. I find that very interesting because it gives a completely different way of looking at it. Because if people think that when they have problems, something is going wrong, the alchemists say, no, when you have problems, something's going right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a different perspective.
Mhm.
People, I think, just naturally gravitate towards the glass being half empty as opposed to being half full. Maybe it's the same concept.
Funny because a lot of people say if you're not arguing in a relationship, someone's not telling the truth.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Because a relationship is two neuroses coming together. So it's always a problem.
You're gonna make money for all those marriage counselors now.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And there's some great ones out there.
Yeah, I might look one up.
So for me, what's very important at this moment is that my 4 novels are coming out this weekend.
Yes. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Very welcome.
This weekend.
This weekend, yeah, they're coming out at Amazon this weekend.
Nice.
It's a saga called Red Sulfur.
Okay.
And it's the story of the last alchemist carrying the philosopher's stone. So last alchemist that carries the sorcerer's stone.
Wow.
And he's being chased by everybody because everybody wants to get that stone because it can actually make literally tons and tons of gold. Now, the story comes from research that I did, that in 1666, there was a transmutation from lead into gold that was verified by the mint master of the Netherlands. And Holland at the time was the biggest power in the world. And so it was verified by somebody who was really aware of fool's gold. It was verified by Benedict Spinoza. Spinoza was considered to be one of the greatest philosophers of the second millennium. It was verified by Robert Boyle, who was the father of chemistry, and all these people and Isaac Newton, they all believed and were convinced that this had actually happened.
Wow.
And so I took that transmutation, that story, as the beginning of the story of that I then fictionalized. What if these people have seen this transmutation and we say it's impossible? You cannot do this because the only way to do it is to take electrons away from the nucleus of lead so that it becomes gold. But that's not what they were doing. So that's the only way to make gold. We can make gold these days, but it's so expensive that it doesn't make any sense. So I took it as, what if this is actually a true story? But you can only explore that in fiction. So I had an alchemist who was an alchemist that was a known entity. His name was Theodore Montanus, who wrote one of the main treatise on alchemy in the 17th century. And he goes to demonstrate what is called the projection. The projection is when the stone is being put onto lesser metals and transforms these lesser metals into gold. That's called a projection. And so he was doing a projection in front of the physician of the the ruler of the Netherlands, the Prince of Orange, and he falls in love with his wife. And his wife falls in love with him. And the problem is that the red sulfur can only pass through his bloodline to the next, but he doesn't have any offspring. And but the problem with the woman that he falls in love with is not the marriage. She would have left the marriage in a heartbeat. But the problem is that she can't have children. An illness had left her barren. And she suggests that her niece, who she brought up as her daughter, will have the children for them. Now, this is a recipe for disaster. And so this triangle between mother, the one who's brought up as her daughter, and the alchemist, the three of them are together, and it's a very explosive. And from that, children are born. And at the same time, it is the story of how alchemy is done. And it is very, very importantly, the story of the battle for science, because the battle for science is fought in Europe in the 17th century, because the Church of Rome is trying to suppress it. That's why Galileo was put under house arrest. And
that's true.
And yes, and so and Giordano Bruno was burned on the stake. So the Inquisition was very good at repression, and so there was a movement that was going on. It was a Republican movement, not Republican with a capital R, but Republican in the ones that were proponents of republics. A Republican movement to welcome new ideas, and that was strongest in Holland. Of course, I'm biased. I'm Dutch, right?
Right. That's okay.
I grew up in Holland. I did my first studies in Holland, and I moved away. I came to the United States when I was 29.
Oh,
so
the only word I know is Gouda.
Gouda, yeah, because
that's the only word I know, because
I
sell cheese. We're cheese wholesalers. Yeah, it's one of our biggest sellers.
Yes, well, Gouda is called Gouda, and yes, and it's very delicious cheese. But anyway, so the Netherlands at the time, Holland at the time, was the first republic. It was not the first republic, but one of the first republics at the time that was giving tolerance and that tolerated new ideas. So it became a haven of science. And there was a battle going on between the Dutch and the French, and the French were led by Louis XIV in Versailles, who wanted to become the emperor of Europe and set up a Catholic system all throughout Europe. And the battle is how to prevent the church taking over all of Europe, and that comes very strongly in the battle for England. And it's about, the story is also about the invasion of England that takes place, and to free and keep free science, so that science can keep on experimenting. Because in England in 1407, alchemy was outlawed. You were no longer allowed to do alchemy, no longer allowed to do experimentations. And people like Isaac Newton and the Royal Society were very much against that. They wanted to get back to experimentation, and there was a battle between the Christians and the Protestants to keep science free, to keep science open. And so that's what the story is all about. And then, of course, there's phantoms that are chasing them, and battles for immortality and for the fountain of youth and all that kind of stuff, all the usual stuff.
Of course, you have to get all that drama in there too. That's people
but because it is so dramatic. I've worked on it for 10 years, and it became more and more dramatic. I just followed it. I was
dramatic
basically
and romantic.
The yeah,
you're all romantics.
People love it. People love it. My gosh. So
I watched you on YouTube all afternoon. I'm just saying. It's just like, wow.
So, wow, that's a lot to swallow. You got 4 books, people. You could be busy for a while. Christmas presents, people. You'd be good for the rest of the winter after that.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah.
You won't have to leave the house. My gosh.
Well, they can even search you on Amazon. as an
Yes.
author and put in a notification, and it'll come up to remind you to purchase it this weekend. If you're interested and you're concerned you might forget.
Yeah, you can already get the first 3 books are already out, and the 4th book is coming out this weekend. Yeah.
Great.
No, that's fantastic. Okay, where do we go from here? You're the teacher, your show, we're the listeners.
Okay. So how can we use alchemy these days? I think
Okay.
that's an important question.
That's a good
And
question, actually.
yeah, because people think of alchemy as the precursor of chemistry, and therefore it is just now it's over and we have much better systems. But we can learn a lot from alchemy. In the first place is that we can learn the way that alchemists did research, how they were.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you, Renee, very much.
There you go.
She stopped Christmas decorating to watch you.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hope your back's better.
So where was I?
How can we use
alchemy today? Yes, and but I was going along a certain line.
No, that's okay.
So what is happening is that we think that alchemy is just a precursor of science, and therefore it is overrun. But the way that the alchemists are doing research, the way that they are with their material, is very different than the way that these days scientists are with the material. From since the 17th century, we have been looking at the world. There was a separation between us and the world. There was a screen between us and the world, and now there's entirely everything is behind the screen. So there was a screen between us and the world, and we are subject and the world is object. And therefore we can study the world and we have control over the world, and that's how we created the computers through which we are now communicating with each other. So it's very important. Science is a really important achievement. But the way that the alchemists were working was that they were communicating with the materials. The metals are alive, so it is a dialogue between metals and the alchemist. And by the change that takes place in the metals, the alchemist changes. And now, this is not just something from alchemy. The greatest scientist, physicist of the second part of the last century, his name is Richard Feynman. He worked on the Manhattan Project. Everything that we are now developing in quantum computing comes from him. The way that he worked is he would roll on the floor and he would be completely in what he called the wiggle, 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 and the jiggle, jiggle, jiggle of the quantum motions. And as his whole body came involved with that, once his whole body was involved with it, then he started with the mathematics. So it's a very alchemical way of dealing with it. He called it physical intuition, and I think it's really important. So I find in my work, my specialty is working with dreams. I've worked with between 40 and 50,000 dreams professionally in my lifetime.
Gosh,
And,
I got a doozy. Yeah.
And so, well, if you do it for 50 years, it's you get more.
We'll have to bring you back
right?
on the show just to do a dream talk. My gosh.
You could probably do 3 books just based on one dream that I've had since I was a kid. It's just insanity.
Absolutely. And so, and that's the interesting thing. So in that dream, that the dream has a hold of you, right? So it is not that we have dreams, but dreams have us. That dream has you, right?
Basically.
It still is influencing you. It is still a world that you move around in, because what happens in a dream is that you are in a world that surrounds you. You're in a world that you know is real, in a world that you know is entirely physical, in a world that you know is reality, and then you wake up. And so as you wake up, you realize that it is not a physical reality, and that's why I call it a quasi-physical reality. It's something that presents itself as reality, but is a reality. And then it is depends where you wake up. If you wake up in Aboriginal Australia, you may say that those are the ancestors, and if you wake up in a scientific environment, you say it's kind of messes that are going on in the brain. And if you wake up in well, if you wake up in Japan, then yeah, the dream world, Neptune is the dream world indeed. If you wake up in Japan, you may go to a tree that has a rope around it, or a stone that has a rope around it, where a kami lives. A kami is a spirit. And so you would do rituals around dreams. And but we have this notion, which is because we live in a world of individualism, and that dreams are about us. We believe that dreams are about us. And I don't know if that's true. It is just what our culture believes. I am, as they call, I am a phenomenologist. And phenomenology is the science of experience. So I'm interested in what people experience and the reality of their experience. I am not interested in what things really truly are. I'm interested in experience. And in the experience of dreaming and the experience of alchemy is true experience. And somebody just said, we're going back to the old world. In the old world, in the alchemical world, yes, going back to the old ways. Yeah,
I believe that.
that is the world of participation, where we
Right.
participate in the world, where we participate. You see trees on your screen, where you participate with the trees, and where you communicate with the trees, because the trees are alive and everything is alive. In that world, if you cut down a tree, you can feel it in your own body, and therefore you will cut down fewer trees than if it's
Yes.
just an object out there. So
Yes.
we are going back to participating in the world, and that will have an enormous influence on the ecological future that we're having, because one of the reasons why we're in an ecological disaster is that subject-object split that we're in, so that we can just ravage nature because it's just an object. And but if we participate in nature, it becomes much more difficult to eradicate the rainforest if you feel every tree that goes over in your own body.
Well, because we're connected to the planet, like our energies are
Yeah.
all connected. So you feel like it has a life force.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And
And
people don't
that
realize that. Like you have a life force.
well,
We're
yeah,
all connected with
Mhm.
yeah.
this,
Well, it
all this
took us. It
harm
took
that
us.
we're doing. It's
Yeah, it
dangerous.
took us 400 years to get here, right? We
Yeah.
started thinking that way around the beginning of the 17th century. That's why I'm so interested in the 17th century.
Right.
um, that we began to be split off from nature so that we could start to control nature. And but the way that you opened this program is as above, so below. As in nature, so in us, right?
Yes.
So
Mhm.
there is correspondence, there's constant correspondence going on between us and the world around us. If we lose that sense of correspondence, we can just destroy the world without feeling it.
Well, it's like Sir Isaac Newton. For every action, there is an opposite reaction.
Right. That's right.
Mhm.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
I think if everybody could actually grasp that, they would do less harm.
Well, that's why I think that alchemy is so important also
Right.
today, that we are participating in the materials that we work with,
Mm.
that the materials that we work with are part of the same world that we are part of. And if you begin to realize that, then you will still have to cut trees. You will cut trees. We will cut trees. We will drive cars. We will do these things, but you will do it in a different way, because you can feel it. You can feel it with your body, what you're actually doing. And that feeling in the body will make you much more careful and much more respectful. See, we've lost respect.
When you say things changed in the 17th century because they were trying to take control of nature, do you think it's also because, I mean, let's face it, the governing bodies, so to speak, of the time were just hell bent on taking control of everything, everyone,
Hmm.
oppressing everything, and
Yeah, but
all within it,
that had been going on for
centuries.
thousands of years.
Yeah,
In the
And
beginning of
so
time.
the question is, why does it happen then?
right.
And there is one thing that I think it is called the Copernican revolution,
Okay.
where Copernicus was saying the Earth is turning around the sun and the sun is not turning around the Earth. He
Mm.
was still allowed to say that because it was just a hypothesis. But
Right.
then Galileo said, this is actually true. I can see it through my telescope. So
Mm.
it is the invention of tools. And so we are now making tools where we can actually see and prove that the Earth is turning around the sun,
Hmm.
and that we have a solar system, and as our technology gets better and better, we see that we're not just a solar system, we're part of a galaxy. And then we begin to realize that there are hundreds of galaxies, and we are in some kind of a little back street of a galaxy, somewhere in a little back street of a gigantic cosmos that is constantly expanding. So that changes our minds. And so, in that world where our technology is getting better, um, we become increasingly insignificant. And, um, and at the same time, we can control the world around us more, but we are suffering from our own insignificance.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because before the 17th century, we were the center of the cosmos. We as humans were the the God created beings that were above everything else, that had been given by God control over everything else. And so you had an enormous sense that you had power, and that power was then taken away by the authorities, and they had more power, but that the human being was meant, the human being had meaning, and that receded, and now we are in a state where everything is more or less meaningless. And so therefore alchemy is really important, to return to meaning. What makes sense, what really matters. And the question what really matters is of course an alchemical question, because it's what is the essence of matter,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
That's a lot.
Yes. No, it's true. Yeah, I'm just letting it all. I'm just, yeah, no, it's true. It's true. So moving forward, then, science became acceptable.
Yes, science became acceptable, especially in the Enlightenment in the 18th century.
Yes.
And then the big thing of science was technology, and
Right.
technology was getting better and better. Of course, the most important things that happened in science um, uh, were about relativity theory and quantum physics, and with quantum physics, we began to realize that we cannot be separate from what we study, because we always participate in what we study. So alchemical notions were beginning to seep back in, that
Mhm.
there is no objectivity. And yes, so it became more and more important. But what was most important is that we created computers, we created trains, we created
Mhm.
cars. And so science had enormous results. But there is a movement going on against science. And I find that dangerous. I think that we should relativize science, but we should not move against science, because science is at this moment the best we can do. And so if there is a whole movement going on, if the science says this, then it must not be true, because we are anti-authoritarian and we think that science is yet another authority, and
Mhm.
therefore we can dismiss everything that science says. No, no, no. But we should relativize it. Science does not give us anything about meaning. Science doesn't give us anything about what matters.
That's very
Science doesn't.
cold.
Yeah, science
Yeah.
is a way of looking at the world behind a screen. And
Mhm.
so it's very
Flat.
effective. Yeah, flat.
It's flat.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it will become through VR and AR. It will become no longer flat. I mean, I think
Yeah.
we're in the last decades of the screen.
Mhm.
But
I mean, their way of thinking.
yes,
It's
their
just,
way of thinking
yeah.
is yes, exactly, and so it gets hollow. And so I think that one of the main things that people complain when they get into my therapy room is about emptiness and about hollowness. And so, yes, if science is the only thing, then the world is a hollow place. And then we live in an endlessly expanding universe that is entirely without meaning.
Mhm.
So alchemy brings us back to a connection, to a participation, and that is of great importance. And our dreams do too. And so we can realize that our rational selves are not the only inhabitants of our being. Our being is much larger than just rationality.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think people can relate to dreams. I don't know that people can connect that, to alchemy per se. I think when people think of alchemy, it's the first thing that comes to mind with alchemy. Oh, we're going to turn this to gold. Just, I think,
Magic.
Yeah, but we're all doing
there's
that.
no
We're all
real,
doing that
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
But
because
it's very magic. Yeah.
Magic.
well, the alchemist says that all metals desire to become gold. So there
Mm,
is a deep inherent desire in every human being to turn into gold. Now you
mm,
can do this by going and working on the stock market and making tons of money. That can be one kind of gold, or you can make yourself and your life more valuable, or you can add value to the life of others. That is all alchemy, because you are making things more precious. And the drive towards making things more precious is a central drive in the human being. That is in alchemy said to be the drive to make gold out of lesser substances. We all have that. We want to give it to our children. We
mhm,
want to give to our children something more precious. And we work our butts off to make the world of our children more precious. And
mhm.
so that's alchemy,
No,
because there is a drive in every body to become the most precious you can be.
and when you think of the connections, with that mindset, with that theory, and the connections to the earth and to all that is good and to all that is pure, it's almost has a very intense spiritual aspect to it.
Oh, definitely, because it is the notion that and it's a spiritual aspect that we can influence, that we
Right.
can enhance the preciousness of the world, that
Hmm.
the world already is precious. And my
Mm.
God, I will be turning 74. The world is getting more and more precious every day.
Right.
Um, and so we are, but we can enhance the preciousness. We can work on it to make your family life more precious, to
Mm.
make your relationship life more precious, to make your inner life more precious. That desire is alchemical desire. That's the desire to make gold. And so therefore I think that alchemy will be with us for centuries to come.
Well, it's definitely an old way, the way of the ancients.
Yes.
It's like what once was will be again. I think
Mhm.
you. I think. Do you think people long to go back to a time like that, as opposed to all this new technology that just seems to be, we're being buried in technology, we're becoming mindless drones because of this,
Oh
which
my
is an
Yeah.
amazing
gosh.
piece of technology, but
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
overused.
where does
I
it leave us?
love
We don't converse, we don't make a phone call, we
Oh,
don't write a
Nobody
letter.
I
talks to each
love
other
this.
anymore.
I love
Me
this. I
too,
love
but
phones.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't.
no,
I
no.
leave mine in another room quite often.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and very often
we
you don't.
rely too much now on the technology.
I think that we are in an in-between phase of technology. I think we're at the very beginning of technology.
Oh,
And
Really? Because
oh
it's
yeah,
it's
we're in the stone age of technology. Oh my
I
God.
I challenge you to point someone out to me in a store or in a shopping mall or in a parking lot that doesn't have this glued to their heads, other
No,
than
they,
myself, because
yeah,
often I'll
no,
even leave mine
absolutely.
in my
No,
car.
I teach all
Okay.
over the world. I teach in
Yeah.
China. In China, kids have cell
Yeah.
phones all
Well,
the time. In Africa, there were no telephones or very few landlines, and suddenly everybody has a cell phone. So cell phones have changed everything,
Mhm.
and
But it's opened the
everybody
world
has.
up for some
It
people.
has opened the world up,
Yeah.
and so, but it will be a technology that will go on. And so, as I said, the screen is an intermediary. I think that eventually we will have contact lenses and smart clothes, and we can interact with the world, that is also
and
a world of artificial intelligence. Yeah, that's where it's
That's
going.
frightening. That's frightening,
it's
though.
Yeah,
extremely
it's frightening to
frightening.
you, but not to your grandchildren, not to you, for you, your children. It's not
Well, I
frightening
suppose
to
if
my
it's all you
grandchildren.
know.
It's I don't like
Yeah.
it even then, because what are we creating? We're losing sense of self. We're losing
The whole
any
Terminator thing's coming to
social.
mind right now.
I mean, I have a whole issue with it. And I know my daughter, her career is based on technology,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I want to know, where does it stop? Like I always
It
say that
doesn't
this
stop. It's not going to
generation,
stop.
no,
No, it's
but
never going
where
to stop.
do we put our foot down and say, this is going too far? You're not communicating with anyone. You're living in an I, me world in technology.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
about you. It's about
what
what
is
you need, to
what?
do right then and there, how to avoid people, how to avoid situations. Like it becomes
Mhm.
a whole other thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. The loneliest generation is Gen Z and the millennials. So there's an incredible amount of loneliness there. And I like the possibilities of technology, and I don't think it's going to stop. Whatever we do, it's not going to stop. If people said in the 19th century, "Oh, trains are going so fast, you lose your soul when you're in a train. We have to stop this." Nobody stopped trains,
No, one.
and
Mm.
we are always afraid of technology, and so now we're afraid of cell phones, and in 20 years we'll be afraid of. For instance, they asked 100 scientists, what frightens you most in the future, and they were not saying global warming, they were saying artificial intelligence, because now
Yeah.
people think that artificial intelligence is taking over the world, and I think that that is very short-sighted. It's the
Stephen
beginning
Hawking
of the
was one of
development.
He he was one who said, don't put out a signal out. You might not
The
like what you hear
Stephen
back.
Hawking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am not afraid of technology. I embrace technology. I'm not afraid. I feel sorry for the next generation. I feel sorry for the next few generations. We lost so much just with the television. We're losing family. We're losing emotions. We're losing humanity in this. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, there's a very interesting conversation. It was done 2,500 years ago, and it was a conversation between Socrates and Plato.
Mm.
And Socrates said to Plato, "You are going to mess with our minds. You are going to destroy our memory because you are a fan of writing. You don't write things down. You keep it in memory, because if you keep it in memory, you have a much different relationship with it." And Plato wrote it down. That's how we have Socrates to begin with now. So there's always been a fear of the new technology. And we should keep that in mind. And we should keep that in mind, that we are influenced by the fear of new technology, and that the new technology 2,500 years ago was writing. And
Right.
so
That's
there was a
true.
movement against writing.
Mhm.
So you have to keep that in mind. Of course, there's reasons to be afraid, and the world is going to hell in a handbasket, but it's always been going to hell in a handbasket, just goes a little quicker now. And
It's a little more extreme.
but the fear is an archetypal fear. There's an archetypal fear of new technology, and so yeah, I always try to stay aware of it when I see the new technology.
I love technology. I love everything about it. I love how you can, stay in touch with family if it's used for the right reasons. The Zoom during the pandemic, all of that. I'm so in love with that, and I'm so for moving forward. But I feel that we have a responsibility to our children and our grandchildren to keep them, conscious of humanity, and to
Oh,
keep them
absolutely.
present. I think that's very
Absolutely.
important, because
Yeah.
we were talking about this today at the dinner table, how, and then I'll stop because we're going completely off, how suicide rates have risen since social media among 12 and under.
Yes.
So where is this going? We have to, as a society, be able to balance this somehow. And again, we
Yeah.
have a responsibility to our children and our grandchildren
Absolutely.
and our
Yes.
neighbors to
Yes.
step in and tell them not to forget to live. Because with AI comes also a lack of spending any time outside. There's you're not going to have that. You're not going to have them tending to the gardens of the world or the forests of the world. That's not going
You
to
know,
happen.
yeah, I think that I'm a generation older than you. And so I was saying this about your generation. I was saying about your generation, you never go outside because you always sit in front of the television.
Yeah,
And
I was
so,
always an outdoor kid, though.
yeah.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this we have to just keep in mind that every generation says this about the next generation and about technology.
I
And yeah.
understand that.
And so I am very interested in it because I am working on developing empathic AI, and to have AI companions to treat the epidemic of loneliness. But let's not talk about that, because
Do you
that's
think that will come in our lifetime?
Oh yeah, no, we're now developing it, and I think
Ah,
it will be we'll be having the prototype ready next year.
wow.
So yes,
Congratulations.
yeah,
Yeah.
and but that creates a lot of the fears. It creates a lot of people that are afraid of AI. What happens if you have an AI companion? But let's go back to alchemy.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay,
All right. We'll tackle
opinions
this
about
one.
transhumanism.
Yes.
And I would like to know, if can the person who says that explain what they mean by transhumanism?
Dave, can you
Because
expand on that? And we'll bring your comment up on screen, if you
please.
don't mind.
Mhm.
So from that point, we'll let you just take into another direction while we wait for Dave to put up his
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah. But I want to go back to the fact that the world around is precious, because that's what we agree on, right? Amelia is saying
Oh,
the world
yeah.
around us is precious, and therefore we have to go into that world. We have to communicate with that world, and we shouldn't lose our communication with that world. Well, that is very much what the alchemist says: play with the world, be with the world, and let the world influence you. Let the world enrich you, enrich the world. So it's a two-way channel.
Mhm.
It is, we don't just take from the world, but also give to the world, because it has to be
Yes.
a two-way channel.
Yeah.
There it is.
Turning natural biological into artificial. Well, yes, it's the problem of the cyborg. So the cyborg is part human, part machine. And of course, there are already cyborgs around. Everybody who has a pacemaker
Yeah.
basically is partially a cyborg. So the interaction and the interface between humans and technology will become increasingly intimate.
Mhm.
And for Parkinson's now, they have brain implants. And so it is happening. It is already happening, and it will happen increasingly, because the technology, as it goes further, will influence our experience of body more. And when our clothes become smart clothes, and we can pick up things from the other side of the world in our clothes, it will change us. We will be changed by technology. See, I am interested in the experience of it. I'm not interested in if this is good or bad. I'm not interested in if I'm interested in if it turns something that that I hate. I would like to limit it. Like I wouldn't want machine guns in the hands of 10-year-olds. So there is a sense of limitation, and that limitation we need to focus on. But I think that there will be a development, an ongoing development between humans and technology, where they will become increasingly one entity. Does alchemy believe in soul? 3C extra realities. Okay.
So the C-dimensional space and extra realities.
Yes, soul is absolutely central to alchemy. And soul is called anima, and everything that is animated has soul. And so, because anima animates, that's what anima does. That's what soul does. It's the animating principle. So we're being animated by alchemy and by soul, and every metal has soul. Every metal has spirit, and every metal has soul. And soul is seen to be the world in between. Soul participates in body, and it participates in spirit. It participates in mortality, and it participates in eternity. Soul is the in-between world, and that in-between world is absolutely central to alchemy, the world of soul, the world of in-between, and it's called the daimonic realm. It is the realm of the daimon. The daimon is the in-between character. Like, for instance, a planet is a daimon. The planet is in between the world of eternity and the world of the earth. And so that world in between, that world of soul, that world of the daimon is absolutely central to alchemy. And so, are there more dimensions? Yes, there are as many dimensions as we can experience. And so once you get into because we've been sitting with trees on the screen, right? Have I only been sitting with trees, or has everybody
that's
been
our background.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
That's our background. You're sitting with trees.
Yes. So we're sitting with trees, and as we're sitting with trees and we get into the perspective of trees, we get into another dimension, because the perspective of the tree, once you become identified with the tree and you begin to experience the tree as a presence, you are in another dimension. You're in the dimension of that tree. So every material has its own dimension. And so there are thousands of dimensions. It's like the Hindu have millions of gods. So there are as many dimensions as you can experience.
There you go, Dolly. Okay. So where are we going to go? Where are we going to go next? So let's talk magic.
Magic.
Let's talk magic.
Yes.
Everybody
Does it
loves
exist?
magic.
Is it real?
Everybody loves
Is it real? Yeah. Well, I mean, who would think that you
magic's
could actually
very real.
turn gold into or metal into gold? You say yes, expensive process. So let's talk about magic. Many people believe it's true.
Well, there are people that have said, I forget who says it, but to a culture that doesn't know something extraordinary is seen as magic. If you have somebody who has never seen our technology, they would say we live in a world of magic. What
Correct.
we are doing right now is pure magic. Pure magic. I'm sitting in Australia. I'm looking at a screen, at a camera, and you're looking at me, and thousands of people, I don't know how many, but many people are watching us, and millions of people are watching it. This is amazing. It's amazing.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
So let's start with that. Magic is everywhere.
Right.
But now let's talk about the magic as people are frequently talking about it.
Right.
Magic is about communication with the world of the daimones, communication with the world in between. And as we communicate with that world in between, that in olden days was called the gods, in that communication, we can use the power of that world in between to affect things in this world. That is the definition of magic, basically. And yes, when I was in the outback in Australia, I write about it in a book called Tracks in the Wilderness of Dreaming, I was speaking with an Aboriginal medicine man, it's called a Nunkari, and at night he becomes an eagle, and then he takes his patient on his back and he flies to the center of the galaxy, and that's where the ancestors live, and he falls on kind of sticks that stick out, and they penetrate him and the patient on his back, and then he flies back, and the next day the patient is either healed or has enormous positive results from that. At least that's what I'm being told. And but they all say it. It's not just one Nunkari telling me this journey as an eagle to the center of the galaxy is, in our language, pure magic. And so they use magic all the time, and traditional cultures have been using magic all the time. I am not a fan of magic.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because I think that what I would want is to communicate with this other world, not have it do my bidding. I don't want that other world to work for me. I don't want to employ that other world. I know that when I communicate with that other world, like in dreams, you're in another world, right? If you communicate with that other world and begin to be identified with beings in that other world, things begin to change, and things change frequently for the better. And so I want to set up a communication with the other world. I think that if I try to tell the other world what to do for me, it becomes another extension of my egotism and my egocentric notion. I'm interested in what they have to say. I'm interested in what they want. I want to get to know them. I want to know this other world, and that's why I'm so fascinated with dreams. That's why I'm working with dreams, because there you move into the other world. And as you begin to identify with characters that are non-ego, that are not self, and you begin to identify with other characters, you get into completely different dimensions and you change. So you change. So I am not a great fan of magic because I don't want to be egocentric towards that world, that other world. So I believe in the same phenomena, but my attitude to it is different.
That's fair.
That's why the field that I've created is called embodied imagination. The embodied imagination field sets up an embodied communication with imagination.
Can I ask a question regarding a dream? Thank you, Robert.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, how do recurring dreams fit in with this?
Recurring dream, it's usually a recurring theme, right?
Okay.
It's usually not an identical dream. If an identical dream comes back again and again, it's usually from very severe trauma. Severe trauma, you get identical dreams coming back. But usually it's a theme that returns. So this theme must have a particular importance in the life that you lead. And then what I help people do, I help people to return into their dreams, to flash back into their dreams. And through a flashback, once you feel back into the dreams, not just stay in the perspective of the one who's telling the dream, but get into the other perspectives, and then things begin to change, because that's alchemy then, because then we're doing alchemy with dreams, because we're moving into the perspective of the material. And that's what I said is the central thing of alchemy. You begin to participate with the material. So as you participate with the material and begin to experience the dream, not just from the perspective of your habits, but from the perspective of other, everything begins to change. So recurrent dreams, I think, and this is just a fantasy, okay? I have no idea if this is any relation to reality. I think recurrent dreams is very, very dense material that wants to be digested.
Okay.
We
have curious how it fits in.
I have to cut in station ID, sponsor ID.
Almost lost our
before
sponsor.
we get our hands
Almost
slapped.
dropped Yeah, I almost dropped our sponsor right off the table. You are listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and myself, Amelia Pisano. We are broadcasting live from the beautiful city of New Orleans on 105.3 FM. And our special guest tonight is Robert Bosnak. And he's coming all the way from Australia.
Yes, Sydney.
Yes. Okay, I couldn't remember if you were in the States today or not. I couldn't
No,
remember from the beginning
now
of
I'm
the
in
show.
Sydney.
Nice, from Sydney, and we love Australia. We have a lot of listeners in Australia, so we're giving a big shout out and say
Wonderful.
hello to
We
all of
do,
you.
yes.
Yes, we do. We are streaming live right now on United Paranormal Radio Network. Did I get that one right?
No, UFO Paranormal Radio.
UFO
YouTube,
Paranormal. Oh my
International
gosh,
Public
there is
Radio.
8 or 9 of these things. Joe, seriously, if you're listening, like, can you just incorporate this into one? We are United Public Radio. We are also on International Public Radio. And I'm like so out of it tonight. Please forgive me. I'm trying to digest all of this. Our intro and outro is courtesy of Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, Justin Snicker. It's also his voice that you're hearing. He is an award-winning composer. You can find his music on Bandcamp and Amazon. You can find him on Facebook, on Instagram, and I believe he's on Twitter as well. Sponsors tonight and every night from the beginning, and we hope forever, is Folgers Coffee. We love you guys. Thank you so much. Forgive me for those glitches.
That's
I'm
right.
off tonight. I have a cold, but
There we go.
Joe needs to have one.
And there's
One
Folgers in that
peach.
cup, right?
There's always full. Oh, yes. And
Coffee.
Folgers in his as well. Yes. We don't ask because we don't want to know in case it's something we're not supposed to have on
Always say
air.
yes. That's right.
Do you get Folgers in Sydney?
I will not answer that question.
Okay. I wasn't sure if they carry it in Sydney or not. I'm not sure because we don't have very
possible.
much here.
I haven't seen it. So,
Yeah.
but it may be there.
No, we don't have it here
We don't have it
either.
in Canada either, so no.
Mhm.
So, okay,
Yeah.
so can you elaborate then a little bit more on embodied imaginations, since we
Okay.
stopped there.
Yeah. So it comes. The notion of embodied imagination starts out with C.G. Jung. That was where I was trained.
Yes.
But he didn't go very much into that direction. But oh yes, he did go into that direction. But what I have always been interested in is that when you have a dream, you're in a world that is fully embodied, right? Everything in it has a body, and it's not that it's all part of me. That's not how you experience it, right?
Mm.
If you have a dream and a woman walks towards you and you say, "Oh, you are the representation of my soul," the woman probably would slap you in the face.
Right.
Right. So this world that we are in, this world of imagination, the world of the deep imagination, or of what I call the involuntary imagination,
Mhm.
that world is fully embodied. Not only is it fully embodied, but when the imagination comes in, your body begins to respond because all emotions are embodied. Right?
Mhm.
When you get angry, your whole body goes like this. And when you are sad, you go like this. And your whole body constantly responds to all your emotions. And the imagination is full of emotions. And therefore, everything in the imagination is therefore embodied. And the techniques that we've developed and that are now being used worldwide is that you can go back into the imagination, like for instance, a dream. I take dreams always as the example of the involuntary imagination because you didn't make the dream and you know that you didn't make the dream.
Mhm.
The dream is there and you found yourself in it. And so in a dream, so a dream is a world in which you find yourself. And I have developed techniques to flash back into the dream so that you get back into the experience of the dream. Flashbacks are known, for instance, from trauma. You know that in trauma, suddenly the whole environment where you were traumatized comes back. That's a flashback. And so we use the same the same mental processes of flashback for dreams. So we flash back into the dream, and then the dream environment feels around us again. And then we don't only, as I was explaining to Amelia, we don't only feel it from the perspective of self, which I call habitual consciousness, habits of consciousness, but we begin to also feel it from the perspective of others. And we use acting techniques for that. Acting techniques where the actor has to become embodied by the character. A good actor doesn't play a role.
No.
A good actor is embodied by the character.
Mm-hmm.
And so we use the same kind of Stanislavski type techniques to become embodied by the different characters in the dream. And so they begin to live, you begin to live in several bodies simultaneously. And as you live in the body of the tree and the body of the bicyclist and the body of the person who's chasing you at the same time, shifts begin to take place, alchemical type shifts. And these shifts are can have healing effects. These shifts can have creative effects. And I've worked on them with all kinds of artists. I worked at the Royal Shakespeare Company in Stratford, and I worked with microbiologists, and I worked with physicists, and all kinds of different people, painters, writers, and also in my own novels, which is basically following the characters, being with the characters, being embodied by the characters, and just being a scribe writing about it. So those techniques together form the body of embodied imagination. And embodied imagination, the metaphor system that we're using is an alchemical metaphor system. So we are talking about the different colors, as I said in the beginning, and we're using techniques that we believe the material can speak to us.
Mm-hmm.
That is very cool.
Mm-hmm. No,
I would
think so.
imagine actors embrace it because it's a lot like method acting, right? Methodology.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
why that's
Yeah.
Stanislavski. And so, so we use those method ways. That's why I worked at MIT with the head of the drama department, Janet Sonnenberg. Janet Sonnenberg wrote a book called Dream Work for Actors that shows about this method that I've developed, how it can be used for actors. And it's very much like what you're saying.
Method acting, yes.
Acting.
Which almost all Oscar winners have, they have that craft. That's how they practice.
Yeah. Well, and it was very interesting when I was at the Shakespeare Company in England. There was a big discussion going on because the Shakespeare actors, many of the Shakespeare actors, do not want to do method acting because they say everything has to come from the text. Nothing comes from the actor. Everything comes from the text. The person who was particularly strong, I had a big discussion with her, was Cecily Berry, who was Laurence Olivier's voice coach. And she said everything has to come from the text. It doesn't come from the character. The character it doesn't come from the actor. So that which comes from the actor is very much a Russian method, and then it was taken over in the United States. But in England, it's not the primary method.
No, it is in the US, I believe.
In
I don't
the US,
believe it's
yes,
a primary method in Canada either. But
well, that's so interesting about the Canadian actors and the Australian actors. They do both.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not all or nothing here.
Yeah.
It depends on what role they're taking on. I have my brother-in-law's an actor. That's the only reason why I know so much about it.
Yeah, there's the story of Dustin Hoffman and Laurence Olivier, who are working in the movie, the name Sleuth. No, I don't, the name just escapes me. And Dustin Hoffman has to play somebody who has a hangover and has been up all night. So he stayed up all night and he has a hangover, and Laurence Olivier says to him, "Oh man, you look terrible. What happened to you?" And he said, "Well, I got into my role." He said, "Don't you know about acting?" It's a very different
some
attitude.
of them keep that off screen, like you said. They
Oh,
take that home
absolutely.
with them. And I know
yeah.
there's a few actors who have practiced it so much that they distance themselves from their families while filming, not to,
Absolutely,
because if it's a
yeah.
rough character. And I find
Yeah.
that you can tell who uses method acting as well, or incorporates alchemy in it, because
Yeah.
they never take the same type of role. They always
Mhm.
change
Right.
roles to challenge
Yeah.
themselves,
Yeah.
where other
Yeah.
actors will take the same kind of stereotypical
Yeah.
role.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Jane
Very
Campion
interesting. I
just made.
love that.
Yeah. Jane Campion just made a new movie about the dog. I forget, with Cumberbatch, and that was very much done with method acting. But no, but it was all based on dreaming. They used
Mm.
dreaming. She wrote about that, or she talked about that in the New York Times. She used dreaming to get deeper into the characters.
Very
And
interesting.
so
Yeah.
yes, and that's what I was doing at the Shakespeare Company. You can, through dreaming, get much deeper into the characters, because you take the dream not as if it were the dream of the actor, but as if it were the dream of the character. So then the
Mhm.
character begins to dream, and you get very, very unexpected results from that.
Yeah. Well, different outcome. That's very interesting. I love
Mhm.
how that's connected.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd like to see that more.
Yes, well, Jane Campion has been doing it, and I'm sure that this movie is going to be Oscar nominated. So
Ooh,
I
very
hope we'll hear
nice.
more about that. Yeah,
That's
Very nice.
exciting. That's exciting.
yeah.
Well, as we tick away closer to our top of the hour, can we touch on apocalyptic imagination?
Ooh.
Mm,
That for me is very fascinating.
A mouthful.
mhm.
I don't know
Yeah.
why,
A
but
mouthful
just
and a
everything
headful.
about it
Yeah.
just has a ring to it.
Okay, so in 1983,
Mhm.
I did the first conference called Facing Apocalypse,
Yes.
and it was about the apocalyptic imagination in the nuclear issue.
Mhm.
And so it became. I'll tell you a story about that. At the end of the conference, so the conference was, one of the participants was Claiborne Pell, who was the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee at the time, and he said we should have this conference in Moscow. Now this is 1983. And so I ran the conference and I said, okay, great idea. Please help us. And he was going to help us. And he did. He helped us a lot. And I said, the next conference is going to be in Moscow, and we're going to try to have it done in 1985. There were several people who came up to me and said, it has to be done much before that. It has to be done way before that. In 1985, we are already in nuclear winter. The world is already coming to an end. Nuclear bombs will already have fallen. Now, that's the apocalyptic imagination. And the
Wow.
apocalyptic imagination influences the issues that we have with it. So
Mhm.
in 1990, I did a conference on the environment and the apocalyptic imagination in the environment, because I think that as long as we have have these very practical issues, we're going to live with environmental issues for the next 500 years. If we have the notion that it's part of apocalypse, then we think it has to be solved in the next 5 years. In the next,
Mhm.
the nuclear clock was always 5 minutes to midnight, right? And
Mhm.
so that is all and so there are dangers. I think there's a lot of dangers out there in the ecological system. But if it moves into the apocalyptic imagination, then we are really in danger, because then everybody's going to burn out, because you have to constantly be in a state of and you cannot
Yeah.
stay in that state for a
No.
long time, because it has to become like brushing your teeth. We will have to brush our ecological teeth for the next hundreds of years. And
Mhm.
so it is something that we have to do constantly, but we can't do it if it's part of the apocalyptic imagination. I think that apocalypse means revelation. A revelation of a world to come.
Mhm.
But part of that is the destruction of the world as we know it now. And so that's also an alchemical theme. And I think that it's really important to study the way that the involuntary imagination influences politics. I think at this moment, the biggest image, the most powerful image that we're in is polarization. If you look 50 years ago, and you had an idea to create new roads and to create new bridges, everybody would be for it. and there would be a bipartisan movement for it. Now it's become part of polarization because we are inside of polarization. And so we have to realize that polarization and polarity is a very powerful image, and that images guide us. Images are not in us. We are in an image. And at this moment, we are in the image of polarization. And so if we begin to understand that that image has us, and it has the Republicans just as much as it has the Democrats, it has us. It is an overarching image. Like, for instance, in the 80s, it was the nuclear war image that had us. And it's the ecological disaster image that has us. All these images have us. We have to realize how powerful the imagination is, and that the imagination is mainly unconscious. We are unconscious of it. We do not know that we think that we actually hate each other, but we are actually in a state of polarization that is brought on by the image of polarizing. And it's a story that we're in. And that story is something that we have to be aware of. And so that's why I'm interested in the involuntary imagination in politics. It's very powerful.
It is very powerful because it feels like, you have this idea that just goes into a collective of sorts.
Absolutely. And it influences everybody. So in 1992, we did a conference in Moscow. Finally, after 9 years, and the world had not come to an end. After 9 years, we did a conference in Moscow about holy war, because holy war is also an image of apocalypse, and that was getting stronger and stronger at the time, and we're still in it. And so these images, like the image of holy war, has us. And it is not that we have the image; it has us. It moves us, and then we begin to call the other person all kinds of names because we think that they have a holy war against us, and we believe we have a holy war against them. Those kind of images are there all around, and we have to be aware of them because they influence everything that we're doing. Just as much as the individual is influenced by the images of dreams, so the collective is influenced by the images in politics. So I'm very passionate about that.
Absolutely. It's it's like a form of mind control.
Well, yes, but it's a mind control,
Imagery,
but nobody's
imagery.
in control. But
Yeah.
nobody's in control. See,
Right.
people have this notion that all the conspiracy theories come from the notion that there must be somebody in control. There's nobody in control.
Dude, that's just crazy. Right there. That just makes it, you can't
Yeah,
hold anybody accountable.
yeah, right. It is the image that
Right.
we're in. It's the word zeitgeist. We're
Right.
in a particular zeitgeist. We're now in an apocalyptic zeitgeist, in a polarizing zeitgeist, in a holy war zeitgeist. All that stuff is the spirit of the times that we live in, and that's in control. And then we can try to become aware of it and to limit it and all, but there is not an elite that's somewhere that is in control. That's all BS.
Right. So essentially, no one's in control. We are on a ship that's just going amok, and somehow we have to gain control. So how do you gain control of something like that to make it, to level it off?
You have to become aware of it. You have to become aware that you're not the captain of the ship. And
But there's no captain at the helm.
No, but you can be a pilot.
Right.
And so you can help steer the ship. You can
Right.
help steer the
Interesting.
fact that we are in a world that is fully being polarized. We can be aware of the dangers of AI. We can be aware of what that does to our children. That awareness is what we can do, and then start talking about it with each other and say, this is something that is autonomous. We have to begin to be aware that this is something that precedes us, that precedes our conscious awareness. And that's what the great discovery that Freud made about the existence of unconscious drives. These are unconscious forces that are steering us, and we can become aware of them. And we know from psychoanalysis, if you become aware of them and if you can allow them in consciousness, they will shift the way you are in that particular world. So I think that's what we can do.
Very cool. Love it.
It's so simple when you think about it.
No,
But
when,
it's
when
such
Robert
a
puts it that way.
yeah, but I know you make it sound so easy.
Oh, it's not
Everybody
easy.
listening is
It's not
going, "What?"
easy.
No, but
How
you
do
did
we
all
do
the
that?
steps for us. You did all the work for us and then broke it down. Yeah.
I know, but it's convincing everybody else now. We have 2 million people listening going, I don't get it. How are we supposed to figure this out?
Well, you can
Well,
find
the way that you figure it out, I think,
Mm,
is that you realize how often there are emotions that are coming up in you. You have no idea where they're coming from. You don't know what caused them, but they're very strong and you can feel them all through your body. The first thing that you can do is become aware of your body
mhm,
and become aware of the way that these emotions live in your body and how powerful they are and how autonomous they are. Once you begin to respect that, once you begin to respect the autonomy of the emotions and the power of these emotions, you can begin to steer them. You can begin to become a pilot.
mhm,
And so I think that we can pilot our lives. And I think that as you pilot your life, you can become more healthy and more creative as well. But you can pilot life, but you're not the one who's ultimately in control. There's a whole system that is
mhm.
going on inside you that is constantly moving outside of your consciousness, but you can steer it. And that
Mhm.
steering is a really important thing. So we have responsibilities. We have the responsibilities to steer the system.
So you're in control. Essentially, you just have to realize that you're in control.
You have to realize that
But for
there's
yourself.
something. Yeah, you have to realize that there's something bigger going on than just your consciousness. You have to be aware that there are very powerful forces that you're dealing with all the time,
Mhm,
and you can try to grab it through willpower.
mhm,
And I don't think willpower is very strong.
mhm.
But you can also become aware of it and start to live with it and steer with it and dance with it. Then
Right.
life becomes a dance instead of life becoming something you try to suppress or
Yeah, get
something
rid of
that
the
you try.
resistance.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
and here comes in the romance again. I love it.
Right, I know.
I love the way you look at things and the way you break it down for us. I really appreciate it.
Oh,
Well, um, this is a part of the show where you're, what do you want everybody to know? Like, where do you want to go with this? What do you have coming next? How can people find you?
well, if people are interested, really interested in alchemy,
Hmm.
they can find hundreds of hours of my teaching at jungplatform.com. At jungplatform.com, and then just put my name, Robert Bosnak. You will find, I think, 110, 120 hours of my teachings on alchemy. So if you're interested in that, that's where you can find me. And there's a last question. Who
That one's just for
controls?
you. Yeah, we'll let them have it.
Okay. Who controls the Earth system? Um, well, it's a very dangerous question because it could very easily go into a paranoid system. And if you say that there is a particular person that controls the Earth system, um, I think that I am very much with Newton on some level. The world as we know it is controlled by laws, and these laws make the Earth spin around the sun and the sun be part of the galaxy. So the Earth is controlled by laws. And then if you believe that the Earth consists of forces that have their own dimensions, that have their own lives, then the Earth is a community. It's a community that includes the trees, that includes people, that includes stones, that includes metals. It's all a community. So I think that in the end, it is not so much that the community of Earth, I think Earth as community, the community of Earth is being controlled by anything particular, but I am a proponent of what is called complexity theory. And complexity theory says that highly complex systems self-organize. And so I go from the notion that the earth is constantly self-organizing, and it's constantly self-organizing without anybody organizing it. It's a self-organizing system.
Mm-hmm.
That makes total sense.
Fascinating. That is.
And that's been studied now for the last 40 years, complexity theory. If you're interested in, look at complexity theory.
I'm definitely looking that one up.
So the question that you asked before we were interrupted by this very good question.
Yes. Sorry, Dave. That's it.
Can you repeat it again?
Basically, it's where are you going next with all of this?
Yeah. Well, one thing that I'm going with is creating empathic AI.
Yes.
Creating beings that we can be with as companions, because I think that there will be artificially intelligent companions that are empathic, and that's what we're working on at the moment, and working very hard on that. So that is part of the future. I probably will always be studying alchemy until my dying day.
Right.
I have to now write the handbook on embodied imagination. That's going to be a lot of work.
Yes. Fascinating.
Because it's being now practiced all over the world. It's practiced in China and in Japan, and so I have to start writing what I believe it is, because I think that at 74 I probably have, if I'm lucky, 10, 12, 15 creative years left. So if I go to 90, I will have like 16 years left.
Right.
So I want to use that to round things off. And one of the things to round off is to make a handbook for embodied imagination, so that people will have that. And I want to spend a lot of time with my wife, because I met her very late in life, and we have a lot to make up for.
It's not the quantity, but it's the quality.
Well, that's why I'm in Australia. Like, she lives in Sydney, and I live in Santa Barbara. I try to spend. So I try, and I have 2 children and 2 grandchildren, and
very
my
nice.
children are married, and so that's why I go back to Santa Barbara, because they are in LA and I want to spend time with them. And so yes, I want to spend a lot of time on things that matter to me. I walk 3 hours a day. Now that I'm here, I swim an hour and a half a day. I just love to use my body and be in my body. I love dancing. I love rock concerts. I go to another rock concert tomorrow. And so yeah, it's
living life.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's such an incredible privilege. What a privilege to be given life. It's amazing.
It is.
That's a miracle.
You just have to have the balance, right? And life is magic. Yes.
Yeah, life is magic.
So how can everybody find you?
Well, the easiest way is by way of Jung platform.
Right.
They can find me on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
But
the name of the book series again, just put that out there for people.
Yes. The name of the book series is Red Sulfur.
There you go, guys.
And red sulfur is the alchemical name of the Philosopher's Stone. And so what Harry Potter does with the Sorcerer's Stone, I do in Red Sulfur. It's basically Harry Potter for grown-ups.
Very nice.
And so I am, you can reach me there, and you can always send notes to info@jungplatform.com, and it will reach me. And that's where people most likely can find me.
Excellent.
Well, thank you. This was
fun. This was so much fun.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. We
opened us up a lot.
I love alchemy, but it's just been, like, I've been researching just everything and been, media for the last 18 years. So I have to be very diverse in different things. I've never been able to really go after one thing in specific, but this is always, like I said, I've always been fascinated and have been gravitated to the as above, so below. And when I found out it was actually part of alchemy a few years ago, I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
oh,
It's
I learned
standard.
more about this. But it's a time thing, and it's very convoluted.
Very convoluted. That's an understatement.
Yes, thank you. Because I was starting to think, God, I'm an idiot. I just can't get this at all.
Oh
So
my
Yeah.
gosh.
No,
Me on
No,
YouTube until I
only-
found Robert, I didn't even understand anybody.
No, idiots are the people who immediately understand it. Those are the idiots.
so I've got to get one of those books that's just like Alchemy for Idiots. Just try to generalize it, break it down. You know.
Well, in my book Embodiment, there's a whole chapter on alchemy. So if you want
Oh,
to
there
look
we
at
go.
that, yeah.
I'm on Amazon right now, actually. I got
There
all
we
the books
go.
in front of me. Yeah.
There we go. But thank you very much. Maybe we can definitely do this again and do a segment on dreams. And
Oh, definitely. I love talking with you guys. It's a lot of
thank
fun.
you.
Me too.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
It was
much
a
for
lot of
your
fun.
time.
Really,
And
it
thank
was.
your wife for separating with you for these 2 hours. Tell her
I
thank
know.
you.
Well, she's at work, so
Oh, okay.
Well, that works. That works.
Yeah, that
See, for
works
us,
really
it's
well.
like 11 o'clock at night. So,
Yeah.
No, it's
You
here.
know.
It's now 3:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
oh, very nice. So we're not.
And is
hosting.
New Orleans doing well?
We're
New
in
Orleans
Canada.
is-
We air
Yeah,
out of New
we're
Orleans.
streaming out of New Orleans, but
Oh.
yes, but New Orleans actually isn't doing too bad.
Oh, good.
They well, hear me knocking.
Touch wood. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
exactly,
It's
exactly.
Western Canada that's underwater.
Yes.
It's British Columbia
Oh.
that's underwater. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
really bad.
Mhm.
Mudslides are
Mm.
really bad.
Oh, boy.
That's terrible.
We're on the
Holy
East Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of
Well,
livestock.
thank you
going.
very much for having me. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much for
Thank
having
you.
me. I
much.
very much enjoyed it.
It is
Thank
our
you.
pleasure.
Me
Thank
too.
you so much. Thank you. So if you've never used StreamYard, you've got to go down to everybody sits there and goes, how do I get out of here? And then we realize at the end, it's like, oh, sorry. I should have told you.
Yeah, it's the little red
Okay.
dot. We always forget because you always expect it to be right under where the ticker is,
I thought,
but it's further down. Yeah.
Yep. So
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Enjoy your day.
Take care.
Thank
Thank you
You
very much.
too.
Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So we have come to the end of another fantastic segment here on the Outer Realm. Thanks to everyone who tuned in, and huge thank you to Robert Bosnak. Honestly, you're just delightful. Thank you. And of course, we thank our sponsors, Folgers Coffee, who are always there with us. And a big thank you to Dr. Snick, aka Justin Snicker, for providing us with your music, your voice, for the intro and the outro. So please remember to stop by the YouTube channels and subscribe. And don't forget to show us some love on Facebook. We'd appreciate it. Drop us a line at the Outer Realm Contact at gmail.com. The Outer Realm Contact at gmail.com. Let us know what you think. If you have somebody you'd like to see, please let us know. We'll try to bring them on. If you'd like to be a guest yourself, I only respond on the Outer Realm Contact at gmail.com. Please don't message me on Facebook. It's just, I get too many messages in a day and I just cannot do it. It's hard to manage all the group pages over top of all the personal PMs. That's just Facebook, not counting anywhere else. So with that being said, tune in next week, because Wednesday evening welcomes back our dear friend and producer, owner of the station, Joe Montaldo. So we know it's going to be interesting. We just never know where it's going to go. And Thursday welcomes the return of Micah Danks. And he will be discussing the Book of Enoch with his own personal twist and flair, as always. So until then, well, actually, before I sign off completely, don't forget Joe and I on the Gray Zone Uncensored this coming Saturday, 5 to 7 Central, 6 to 8 Eastern. It's going to be a really good one. I think I've outdone myself, just saying. So anyway, till then, Amelia and I thank you. Have a good night and a fantastic, safe weekend, everybody.
been listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live every Wednesday and Thursday evening, 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 to 10 p.m. Central, on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.